All right, guys, what is going on? Welcome to Flav Orellana's MMA show. I'm your host, Flav Orellana. And wow, by the way, brought to you by Four Corner Sports New York. This weekend, we just had UFC 253, headlined by Israel Adesayna versus Paulo Costa for the middleweight title, and then co-main evented by Jan Blachowicz versus Dominic Reyes for the vacant light heavyweight title. Wow, guys. So I'm gonna give you my thoughts and my reactions towards this pay-per-view that just happened this past Saturday. And I don't know, was this one of the better main event cards? No, it was not. I felt like what took away from this card was last week's card, because it was a fight night, and last week's card, there was a lot of competitive fights. And I felt like I was saying it before, some of those fights from last week's card that was headlined by Colby Covington versus Tyron Woodley should have been put into the pay-per-view card. And we had fights like Hakeem Dawada versus Tugova. Tugova was the guy that ended up punching Conor McGregor during the scuffle after McGregor had a bout with Khabib Nurmagomedov. We also had a fight with Brandon Royval, second fight in the UFC versus Kai Carl France. We had a fight between Sayara Eubanks. And then, like I said before, like the light heavyweight championship, the not heavyweight champion, the middleweight title. We had a Diego Sanchez sighting. Yeah, he ended up fighting Jake Matthews. Was it Juan Espino versus Jeff Hughes? So, all right. So, I'll kick it off with Juan Espino versus Jeff Hughes. Heavyweight bout, and ended quickly. I thought it was gonna end by knockout, but Juan Espino ended up taking down Jeff Hughes down, putting him into an arm triangle chokehold, forcing Jeff Hughes to tap out. Wasn't it a very exciting fight? It was pretty much the way I described it. It was 1-2, take your opponent down, and that was it. Fight didn't last no more than a few minutes. Was one of the quicker fights on the card. It was just one of those, like, I just felt like that bout was more of like a filler. Like, hey, we need to put some matches on this pay-per-view card. I felt like this pay-per-view wasn't very completely organized. Felt like the UFC was mainly targeting more 254 as being their heavier pay-per-view for Fight Island, as opposed towards UFC 253. I just felt like UFC 253 had a bunch of bouts, a bunch of fights that could easily have been like prelims in fight nights, but I'm not the matchmaker here. I don't make these type of decisions or anything like that. I'm just an avid fan that loves watching the UFC. And that was one of those fights, Juan Espino versus Jeff Hughes. Just feel like it was just like one of those fillers that we needed to just fill up the card. The fights actually started at 7, not 6 for the early prelims, and Juan Espino ended up taking down Jeff Hughes, forcing him to tap out. We also had a fight between Jake Matthews and Diego Sanchez. Now, Diego Sanchez, in his late 30s, I believe he's 38 years old. He's going to try to fight out the last remaining fights of his contract. I believe he has 4 fights remaining. Fights Jake Matthews, who came into the UFC with a little bit of promise. Fell off the radar a little bit. When he came in, no tattoos or nothing like that. Looked like a kid. Now at 26, 27, buzz cut, weird tattoos that don't really add up. Looks like he has improved a lot since his last fight. So his ground and pound was pretty impressive for Diego Sanchez. I mean, Diego Sanchez is no pushover or anything like that. I mean, if you were to ever see Diego Sanchez and get into a bar fight with him, he most likely will kick your ass still, even this late in his career. But Diego Sanchez versus Jake Matthews, going into that fight, I lean heavily towards Jake Matthews just because of the fact that Diego Sanchez is older. He he's falling under that category of like Legends tours. Is he a legend in my mind? I not really. I guess. I mean, never really won a title or anything like that, so I really can't call him a legend. This talks about how Diego Sanchez and Damian Maia want to fight each other for Damian Maia's last fight. But yeah, Diego Sanchez fought Jake Matthews. It was just all domination by Jake Matthews. Jake Matthews, calf kicks, body kicks, was able to take down Diego Sanchez, did ground and pound, ended up cutting up Diego Sanchez badly by the hairline, causing a huge gash where Diego Sanchez was just bleeding profusely at that point. And Matthews ended up walking out with the unanimous decision. As for Diego Sanchez, I don't know who he would fight next. Dana White had mentioned that he's not too confident whether or not that he's going to have Sanchez end up finishing off his contract. Me personally, I'm agreeing with Dana White on that because of the fact that, look, it's just a name value. People are going to just watch him just because his name. If this guy was like Edward Garcia or something like that, I don't know if there's an Edward Garcia, that does MMA. I'm just naming some random name out there. That still carries at the same level that Diego Sanchez, fights. Nobody would want to tune in. But since Diego Sanchez has been around since The Ultimate Fighter Season 1, still has a lot of name value. So people are still willing to watch. Yeah, I don't know who he would fight next. Would I be surprised if he never fights again for the UFC? Most likely not. But Jake Matthews, I mean, it was a very expected win that he needed to have over Sanchez. Who he should fight? I don't know. Maybe he should fight Michel Pieta. I mean, Michel Pieta ended up losing towards Diego Sanchez just because of a low blow. And Diego Sanchez just took the easy way out by saying that he didn't want to continue the fight. That should be a very exciting fight, Michel Pieta versus Jake Matthews. I mean, I'll be very inclined to wanting to watch that. Michel Pieta is always one of those very entertaining fighters that people should be wanting to tune in. But yeah, that should be something exciting to see if the matchmakers ever decide on putting those two together. We had a bout on the main card between Hakeem Damin Dawodu versus I can't pronounce his first name. I'm just gonna go by his last name, Tugova. Tugova, Russian fighter, is under the Khabib Nurmagomedov camp. We actually had a Khabib Nurmagomedov sighting that day. First time we had seen him in public since God knows when. But he just looked very depressed. I mean, I understand, lost his father. And anytime you ever lose a parent, you can only imagine what type of depression you must be going through. But being in that type of environment that you're in right now with the UFC, coaching, it should be able to easily distract your mind and easily, make the situation a little bit easier for you. But getting back to Tugova versus Dawodu, yeah, first round looked good. Tugova, by the way, I'm sorry. Tugova did miss weight. He was one of the two fighters that missed weight. He missed weight by 5 pounds. He was supposed to weigh in at 145. The max limit you could weigh is 146. Ended up coming in at 150 pounds, but Hakeem Dawodu ended up taking the fight. I understand why Hakeem Dawodu took the fight because of the fact that you train all these amount of weeks for somebody to miss weight, and then you are left with the option whether you want to take it or not. More often than not, you're going to take that fight because you don't want that time to be wasted. But going into round one, Tugova, had the upper hand, leg kicks, good head movement, changing levels. It was a close fight. It was a close round one. Hakeem Dawodu, was pressing forward as well, and I had to give round one to Tugaba. Round two, Hakeem Dawodu just took over. Leg kick after leg kick after leg kick, was just attacking the lead leg, leaning forward. I don't know what happened to Tugaba. I don't know if he wasn't listening to the game plan or anything like that. He just didn't look the same. Tugaba ended up not trying to go for any takedowns or anything like that. And I felt like if he would have tried to take him down, Hakeem Dawodu would have been somewhat of a difference, instead of being able to get chopped up on the leg. Believe me, those calf kicks hurt, especially if you get hit multiple times. I don't know how many times he ate those leg kicks, but it looked painful. And then round three, I don't know if his corners told him that he was up 2-0. I had a 1-1 after 2 rounds, and I don't know. Tugga was just running around. Dawodu was cursing at him, telling him, "Let's go, let's fight." I'm not gonna repeat every single word that he was saying, but shame on you on the ref who ended up telling Hakeem Dawodu to, watch your words, no cursing. They're fighting. I mean, the testosterone level when you're that heated up and you're fighting, anything goes at that point. All right. Sure, but you should know right from wrong on like what barriers not to cross. But for Hakeem Dawodu to tell Tugaba, "Come on, let's fight," let's go, dropping a bunch of F-bombs and stuff like that. There's nothing wrong with that. I was cool with it. It's kind of exciting. But Tugaba was just running around, moving around the whole octagon, just trying to avoid getting hit. And Dawodu was just landing shots on the leg, was throwing a boxing combos. But at the end of the day, when the decision ended up coming through, Hakeem Dawodu came out as a victor by split decision. And it was kind of expected. He did say that he wanted to fight a top 10 ranked opponent. Do I feel he deserves it? No. I feel like he should fight somebody in the top 15 first before he wants somebody ranked top 10. He had originally made a statement back in November, I believe it was, when the UFC was in Madison Square Garden, saying that he didn't want to fight no more on the prelims. I felt like if he would have lost that fight against Tugaba, even if Tugaba was over the weight limit, could have worked against him, and he would have probably most likely been fighting on the prelims. But impressive for Hakeem Dawodu, improving to 12-1, and I think, honestly, in my opinion, he should get the winner between Drew Dober versus I forgot who's Drew Dober's opponent. I think it was Fieta, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, so he should get the winner of Drew Dober versus Fieta. We had a women's bout. It was between what's it called, Sarge Eubanks, or Ciara Eubanks, however you want to pronounce her name. Versus Caitlin Vieira. Now, Caitlin Vieira ended up losing towards Jessica Ai, if I'm not mistaken, and she was 11-1. Oh no, I'm sorry. So Irene Aldana. I'm so sorry. Irene Aldana. She ended up losing to and she was trying to bounce back after experiencing her first loss in the MMA. Facing Ciara Eubanks, who recently just fought at the Apex Center a couple weeks ago, taking this fight on short notice, and Caitlin Vieira just looked like the dominant woman in that octagon, dominating all 3 rounds, making sure that she looked like the more aggressive fighter, the tougher fighter, and Caitlin Vieira ended up winning the fight. I believe it was by unanimous decision. Going into the flyweight bout between Brandon Royval versus Kai Kara France. Now, this was actually one of the more exciting fights on the card. It's actually got fight of the night. So both of these fighters ended up walking away with an extra $50,000. Kai Kara France falling under All City Kickboxing. That's most famously known by Israel Adesayna's camp and Alexander Volkanovski's camp. So Kai France ended up fighting the rookie, the UFC rookie Brandon Royval, making his second fight in the UFC. He came over from LFA, and wow, did Kai France look small versus Brandon Royval? Now Brandon Royval is 5'9". I'm only a few inches bigger, taller than him, but yeah, he looked huge for the flyweight division. Huge. Very skinny, obviously, because they're 125, but these boys were just throwing at it. That first round was crazy. You're looking at Kai France landing a clean, over right hand punch right on the chin, right over here to Brandon Royval, and Brandon Royval, as he's falling down, does some spinning elbow, something similar to what John Jones would do. I was like, what? It was crazy. I looked like a double knockdown at first, and I was very confused. But yeah, Kai France and Brandon Royval in that first round was absolute nuts. At one point, Kai France went down to the floor, and Brandon Royval ended up doing a knee shot right to Brandon Royval on the head or on the neck. I'm not sure, but like in real time, it looked illegal. It wasn't illegal, but it looked really, really scary at that point, because obviously the rules are you're not supposed to hit an opponent with their hands on the floor with a knee shot on the head. And honestly, it looked very, very scary when I saw it. But yeah, no, it was such a crazy fight. Going into round 2, Brandon Royval still dominating, throwing punches. His length was just crazy. His leg reach was even more crazier, preventing Kai France from getting close to him. Kai France would have normally tried to taken him down and like suplexed him and then brought him down to the floor. But yeah, no, Brandon Royval just looks too big, too strong for him. His reach is ridiculous, and was able to bring down Kai France to the floor, forcing it was more of a guillotine, not a gogo plata. I thought it was a gogo plata at first, but ended up jumping on top of Kai France, bringing him down to the floor, forcing Kai France to tap out, and Brandon Royval ends up getting the victory. It was a very, very good fight. Definitely would watch it again. And yeah, we shall see what happens to Royval and Kai France. I think Brandon Royval should definitely fight what's it called? Pantoja, or what's this guy's name? Give me a second. I always forget his name. Akasar, if I pronounce it incorrectly. Sometimes I have a bad pronunciation on these guys' names. Guys' names are the easiest to pronounce. What's his name? Aksarov, if I'm saying that correctly. He should most likely fight him. He's ranked 3. Brandon Royval, what's it called? Definitely should have moved up. I don't know why the UFC app isn't updated yet. He should fight him or Alexandre Pantoja. That's something that I'll be very considerate of wanting to watch. As for Kai France, he should fight somebody like Tim Elliott. Obviously, Tim Elliott has been around for quite some time, and that should be interesting. I don't think they have fought, if I'm not mistaken. Or Jordan Espinoza. Or you know what? I think it'll actually be a really good fight that a lot of people would want to watch. It's very underrated. Why don't you put in Tyson Nam versus Kai France? I mean, both these guys will be throwing fireworks at one another, trading shots like crazy. I mean, Tyson Nam just recently fought, didn't get hurt. He ended up fighting Jerome Rivera, who made his UFC debut from the Contender Series. But yeah, no, I would actually like to see that. It might be a little bit too much of a drop for Kai France. It might be too much of a risk, and a lot more of a gain for Tyson Nam. But yeah, Tyson Nam versus Kai France should definitely be a fight that a lot of fight fans would want to watch, because stylistically it just meshes in well. Yeah, so moving on to the vacant light heavyweight title fight. Recently John Jones ended up moving up to the heavyweight division, vacating his light heavyweight bout. His title. And his previous fight, John Jones had fought Dominic Reyes, Many people like myself had thought that Dominic Reyes deserved to have won that fight, but judges awarded John Jones. And Dominic Reyes' opponent is Jan Blachowicz. Jan Blachowicz ended up recently fighting Corey Anderson, knocking him out, and then ended up fighting Luke Rockhold, putting him to sleep. So it was very interesting to see. Dominic Reyes was heavily favored going into this fight. He looked like the uncrowned light heavyweight champion. He looked like the best light heavyweight in the world since Jones had left the division. And things didn't go as expected for the Reyes camp. So I had said before that I felt like if Reyes comes out aggressive and he sets the tone, Blachowicz isn't going to have an easy night. He didn't do that. I don't know what ended up happening in Reyes' mind, but he felt confident running to John Jones and attacking him. He like blitzed him as soon as Bruce Buffer ended up leaving the ring, and the referee said, fight. He didn't do that with Jan Blachowicz. I don't know if he was scared of Blachowicz's power, but he didn't blitz him. He was being very strategic versus Blachowicz. But Blachowicz's power, I mean, everybody like on Twitter was talking about it. Those two leg kicks that he landed on his left side of his ribs left a really bad bruising, and me and Javier were like, whoa. That was just only 2 leg kicks, and it looks bad. It looked purple. It looked purple like a plum. That was horrible. And that he definitely had felt that. He tried to put on a poker face. It really didn't work. And I don't know. He just seemed like a little bit like scared. I felt like the game plan he had didn't work. Going into round, that was like towards the ending of round 1 and round 2. Blachowicz was just sizing him up, walking him down, throwing combinations, and then just catching. Ended up catching what's it called? Dominic Reyes started gushing blood from his nose, and just did like a vicious like hammer fist right on the face, forcing the fight to be stopped. And Jan Blachowicz ends up coming out as the victor. Poland has a new king in MMA. Well, I'm sorry, they have a king in MMA, and that is Jan Blachowicz. I believe the only 2 Polish MMA fighters to ever receive any type of gold was Joanna Jędrzejczyk and now Jan Blachowicz. So wow, congratulations to you guys, Poland, because you guys have now a champion to be proud of. But yeah, no, I don't know what happened to Dominic Reyes. His stock to me personally has dropped. Who he should fight next? Honestly, I think he should fight the loser between Glover Teixeira versus Thiago Santos. Now, I think he should want Thiago Santos to win because I think he would have an easier time beating up on Glover Teixeira. Or even if this could be possibly a reach, maybe Anthony Smith or Alexander Rakic too. Ideally, I did want to see Alexander Rakic versus Dominic Reyes for the title. That would have been great. But now that Reyes didn't win the title and Blachowicz has it, I don't know. I mean, maybe the UFC makes that fight anyways between Rakic and Blachowicz. Rakic and Reyes. Or Reyes faces the loser between Santos versus Teixeira. Now, obviously, the winner between Santos and Teixeira ends up getting a bout between Jan Blachowicz. But wow, congratulations to Jan Blachowicz. Dominic Reyes, I don't know what happened to you. You didn't look the same after receiving those leg kicks. I don't know if you got scared of the power of Jan Blachowicz, but you need to get back to the drawing board, buddy. Moving on to the main event. You had a main event title fight between Israel Adesayna, the champ, versus Paulo Costa. Now, both fighters were undefeated coming into this fight. Israel 19-0, Paulo Costa 13-0. Last time 2 fighters undefeated fighting for the belt was Lyoto Machida versus Rashad Evans. And yeah, this fight didn't go as expected as well. Dana White had high expectations, calling it, fight of the year, potential fight of the year. This was nowhere near fight of the year. Paulo Costa didn't bull rush Israel Adesanya like he normally does to all his opponents. Instead, I don't know, he just looks scared. He's another one that just looks scared. I think he felt like if he would have bull rushed Adesanya would have clipped him like the way that he clipped Robert Whittaker. So he ends up taunting. He stands still. He stands very stationary. And by standing stationary, that ended up working towards Adesanya's favor. Adesanya was just chewing him apart, giving, kicking him in the calf multiple times in the same spot. I think the first round he probably received about like 10 to 15 kicks in the same spot. After like 4 or 5 kicks, you started to see that area was red. He put on a very good poker face, but my God, the amount of punishment he got on his lead leg, that was very brutal. Adesanya was just picking him apart. And once he saw that Paulo Costa couldn't really move around, then Adesanya started to take a little bit more initiative on wanting to take more risk. Started to throw in a little bit more jabs. Started to throw in a high kick. And then he threw a right-left combination, setting up for the high kick, for staggering Paulo Costa in the second round, and that was the beginning of the end. Ends up catching Costa as he has his hands down, dropping him down for a split second, catching him right in the chin, dropping him, and then Adesanya jumps on top of Costa, just starts beating the crap out of him. What's it called? Ground and pound. Just hammering away until Jason Herzog, the referee, ends up stopping the fight. Adesanya ends up leaving the octagon 20-0, getting his 100 victory in combat sports. So very impressive record over there. But yeah, it was very disappointing to see. I was very excited going into that fight, watching Costa versus Adesanya. Heavily disappointed. To me, this is back-to-back fights that Adesanya, his opponents who he has fought, it just looked like they didn't want to fight their traditional styles. Romero, I felt like had a more, how do I say it? Even though it was a boring fight, he had the right approach by forcing Adesanya to come towards him, and he just stood still, stationary like this the whole time, But both of them are counter punchers. It didn't just work out that way. So we have no reason to worry about a potential Romero versus Adesanya fight, because that's most likely never gonna happen again, especially with everybody in the T-Mobile Arena back in March booing, and it just didn't help that they had the fight of the year right before with Wei Li Zhang versus Joanna Jędrzejczyk. But getting back to Adesanya, yeah, after the fight, gets the victory. Did something disgusting in my mind. Ended up humping Costa as he was on the floor. He was crouched down in more of in a fetal position, and ended up humping him. I don't know. That was just weird. I knew Adesanya was weird, painting his hair pink, but then just humping him too. That was just yes. He ended up violating Costa, embarrassing him. But then also that just makes me question, where's your head at too? But some people found it funny, other people, didn't. I was one of the people that really didn't find it that funny. And then said like some really nasty, sexual remarks towards Costa's camp. But yeah, so that was just that was the thing between Adesanya versus Costa. But who should Adesanya fight? Adesanya did end up calling out Jared Cannonier. But unfortunately, Jared Cannonier has a fight between Robert Whittaker versus, in UFC 254. So I think the winner between Cannonier versus what's it called, Whittaker, should get the next crack at Israel Adesanya. Yeah, and then as for Paulo Costa should definitely be fighting next. I would say, Romero versus Costa Part 2. The first fight was actually pretty impressive. I actually was very in favor of it. It was very, very nice to watch. Both were going at it. I mean, usually nobody walks down Yoel Romero, and Paulo Costa did. I would like to see if Yoel does any changes. Or, you could do like Jack Hermanson or Darren Till. Paulo Costa versus Darren Till should be interesting. Or maybe even Kelvin Gastelum too. I mean, maybe that's just a little bit too far down the rankings, but yeah, there's tons of things that you can do with Paulo Costa now that he's gonna have to probably win like an additional 3 more fights before we even think about having him in any type of title fight, considerations. But yeah, so overall for the whole card, I ended up giving this card, I want to say a borderline B. Reason being, like I said, it just didn't help that the previous card, the UFC Fight Night headlined by Covington versus Woodley, did so well that the fights top to bottom were great. It was an easy A, and it could have been an A plus. And then for this pay-per-view, it was just like, okay, we're all tuning in to see Adesanya versus Costa and Jan Blachowicz versus what's it called? Jan Blachowicz versus Dominic Reyes. But yeah, like I said, I just felt like some of these fights on that card were like a little bit like throw-ins, just to fill in the pay-per-view, fill in the prelims. But yeah, I think that the UFC was mainly more targeting, trying to advertise Khabib versus Gaethje, make sure that card looks stacked. But yeah, that card, they already announced the pay-per-view for that card. Unfortunately, there's not going to be no Tony Ferguson versus Dustin Poirier. There's not even going to be any Zabit versus Yair Rodriguez. So for that card, give me 1 second. I will pull it up for you right now. Where is it? All right, so yeah, so it's obviously the main event could be Nurmagomedov versus Justin Gaethje. Co-main event, Robert Whittaker versus Jared Cannonier. Third fight will be Alexander Volkov versus Walt Harris. That should be interesting. I actually looking forward to that fight. The fourth fight is Islam Makhachev versus Rafael Dos Anjos. The fourth fight is Cynthia Calvillo versus Lauren Lucky Murphy. And the opener of the pay-per-view, finally, hopefully crossing fingers that none of these two fighters get COVID, because this is maybe like the 5th or 6th time they're trying to rebook this rematch. And you know where I'm going with this, guys. It is Ian Kutabella, or Kuta Alabala, whatever his name is, versus Makovid Ankalaev. Both these two fighters had fought on back in February, UFC Norfolk, Virginia, and it was famously stopped, in the first round. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that fight. Hopefully, that should be a good fight to look forward to. The card overall looks good. It looks way better than UFC 253. Originally, it was supposed to be stacked with Poirier, versus Tony, Zabit versus Yair Rodriguez, but we can expect everything happening, especially in 2020. But until then, I will talk to you guys at a later date. All right, I'm gonna have to head to bed. Have a long day tomorrow. But yeah, that's my rundown for everything for this past Saturday that happened at UFC 253. Like I said, I giving it a B, a solid B. Oh, I'm sorry, a borderline B. Could have been a C plus at worst, but I'm being nice about it. I'm gonna give it a B. And yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens. As for next week, we have a card between Holly Holm versus Irene Aldana. That's going to be the main event. And we also get the return of Carlos Condit. Finally, after a long absence, he makes his return. He's going to be on the prelims. All right, guys. I'll talk to you guys at a later time. All right, you guys have a good night. And thank you for watching Flav Orellana's MMA show. Please hit the like and subscribe button, and also hit that bell for the notifications for anytime I'm going to have a live stream. All right, guys. Peace and love, guys. Have a good night. Peace, guys.